All right, good to be here. Is there cartels? Okay. One second. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunya Jana
Vishnupad, Paramahansa Paravidikacharya, also tell us that Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, friends sake of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopapada Swayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuranam Ki Jai, Jagat Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamaya Ki Jai, Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premananda Hari. All glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vinanta Samaniti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauramani Pachari Nivishesha Shinivadi Paschatya Deja Tarane. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam and 13th text. Is that right? 13th or 12th? 13th, right. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yadendriyom paramo Atta Drashtatmane Pare Parao Vilyante Tada Klesha Asamsuktasyeva Krishna Shah Yadendriyo Paramokta Drastratmani Pareharao Vilyante Tada Klesha Samsuktasyeva Krishna Shah Yadendriyo Paramokta Drastratmani Pareharao Vilyante Tada Klesha Samsuktasyeva Krishna Shah Yadendriyo Paramokta Drastratmani Pareharao Vilyante Tada Klesha Samsuktasyeva Krishna Shah. Okay. Paramota, Rashtraman Yada, when, Indriya, senses, Uparama, satiated, Ata, thus, Drashtri Atmani, unto the seer, the supersoul, Pare, in the transcendence, Parao, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vilayante, become merged in, Tada, at that time, Klesha, miseries, Samsuptasya, one who has enjoyed sound sleep, Eva, like, Krishna Shah, completely. When the senses, translation, when the senses are satisfied in the seer, supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are completely vanquished, as after a sound sleep. So you can repeat, when the senses are satisfied, in the seer supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are completely vanquished, as after a sound sleep. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The quivering of the living entity, as described above, is due to the senses. Since the entire material existence is meant for sense gratification, the senses are the medium of material activities, and they cause the quivering of the steady soul. Therefore, these senses are to be detached from all such material activities. According to the impersonalists, the senses are stopped from work by merging the soul in the supersoul, Brahman. The devotees, however, do not stop the material senses from acting, but they engage their transcendental senses in the service of the transcendence, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In either case, the activities of the senses in the material field are to be stopped by cultivation of knowledge. And if possible, they can be engaged in the service of the Lord. The senses are transcendental in nature, but their activities become polluted when contaminated by matter. We have to treat the senses to cure them of the material disease, not stop them from acting as suggested by the impersonalist. In Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, text 59, it is said that one ceases all material activities only when satisfied by contact with a better engagement. Consciousness is active by nature and cannot be stopped from working. Artificially stopping a mischievous child is not the real remedy. The child must be given some better engagement so that he will automatically stop causing mischief. In the same way, the mischievous activities of the senses can be stopped only by better engagement in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, the tongue engaged in tasting prasada, or remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, the ears are engaged in hearing His glories, the hands engaged in cleaning the temple of the Lord, and the legs engaged in visiting His temples. Or when all the senses are engaged in transcendental variegatedness, then only can the transcendental senses become satiated and eternally free from material engagement. The Lord is the Supersoul residing in everyone's heart, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world, far beyond the material creation, is the seer of all our activities. Our activities must be so transcendently saturated that the Lord will be kind enough to look upon us favorably and engage us in his transcendental service. Then only can the senses be satisfied completely and be no longer troubled by material attractions. Let me read that verse again. Yedendriyo paramukta Srashatmani padevadao Vilyante tadaklesha samsutasheva kritnashaha Somagana timirandasha Gananjana chalakaya chakshur unmiritam Yena tasmai shigaravena maha. So, this verse is very interesting. First, I want to talk about the quivering of the senses. Prabhupada uses this term. What does the quivering of the senses means? It means the senses are disturbed. And as stated, bhukti bhukti siddhikam sakale ashanta Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ateva Shanta. It's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That as long as one wants bhukti or mukti, bhukti of course is sense gratification. Another word of saying that is boga. Boga shari prasaktanantaya prita chetasam. Vyavasayatmaka bhutya samado namatiyate. As long as one wants gross sense gratification, subtle sense gratification, or even mukti, then ashanta, one will not be peaceful, the senses will quiver, or the mind will quiver. It's not actually the soul quivering. Just like, for example, when you have light that is steady, and then you have something in between the light and yourself, and that thing is quivering, you say the light is quivering, right? Or like the sunshine is there all the time during the day, and sometimes there's clouds, and sometimes there's no clouds. So the sun is always there, but it's the clouds that cause the, well, not exactly the quivering, but the lack of sunshine, like that. So it's the modes of nature and our attachment to them. Not the modes of nature precisely, but it's the attachment that's the problem. Everybody understands that? So don't blame the sense objects for causing the quivering. Sometimes immature devotees, they blame the sense objects for causing the quivering. For example, you'll find that the brahmacharis, when they first join the Krishna conscious movement, will blame the women for causing their quivering. Maya Devi. And the women may blame the men for causing their quivering. So that's why in the beginning there may have to be some separation between men and women, because they both start quivering. Or as Prabhupada said, ladies are like fire, and the men is like butter, and you put them together and you get ghee. In other words, the butter melts and becomes ghee, and I'm just adding a little something to it. The butter melts and becomes ghee, and after that you get a ghee huska. Sorry, I added that one. So that's not so bad if they become grahastas, but the quivering is like that. But you can't blame the sense object. Let's say you're attached to a particular type of food. Don't blame the food. Let's say you like pizza. No, don't get angry at the pizza. It didn't do anything to you. So it's actually your fault. You have to take responsibility for your attachment. We're going to talk in a second how to give up the attachment. And so there's also the attachment to getting out of the material world, because, there's dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, which means, first of all, you become religious, then you get economic development, then kama. And then after that, you get frustrated, and after you're frustrated, you want to get liberated, you get out of it, and that doesn't work either. So that's quivering. All this is quivering or agitation of the mind. So the whole point is to stop the quivering, because that's what's causing our misery. And even in Buddhism, they understand this. In Buddhism, they have these four noble truths. Some of you may have heard about that. the Four Noble Truths are that first of all, the quivering, they don't use the word quivering, but miseries are caused by attachment. You give up the attachment, and the miseries go away. And then, yes, miseries because of attachment, give up the attachment, the miseries go away. So, let's see, the Four Noble Truths, yeah, miseries are caused by attachment, give up the miseries go away, and then there's the Eightfold Path after that. Anyway, so even the Buddhists understand that. They don't have everything wrong. But we understand a different way of getting rid of the attachments. And what is our methodology of getting rid of the attachment? Of course, we call this vairagya. And it's one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's principal teachings, according to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. What is that verse? Vairagya Vijaya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Shiksharta Eka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripam Budhir Prabhat Jay. He said, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you've come to teach, first of all, Vairagya and Vidya. And here in the purport, Prabhupada is also talking about Vidya, or knowledge. Knowledge is required. And we're going to talk about what that knowledge is. Vairagya Vidya, you've come to teach renunciation and knowledge, Nija Bhakti Yoga, connected with Bhakti Yoga. Shiksharta Eka, this is your one teaching. Shiksharta, like Shiksha means teaching, Artha, Eka means one. Purusha Purana, you are the supreme original personality of Godhead. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari, you've appeared as Shri Krishna Chaitanya in this particular form. Kripam Bodhir Yastvam Aham Prapadye, which means basically, give me your mercy and I surrender it to you. So, first of all, what is the knowledge and how do we acquire this detachment? First of all, the knowledge, sometimes we hear that knowledge is not required in Krishna consciousness. Isn't it? Sometimes we hear, well, Vasudeva, Bhagavati, Bhakti Janayata. No. We see that there's no impediment in devotional service, ahaitukiya pratyata, and there's no cause of pure devotional service. So one may think, well, there's no knowledge required. But knowledge is required to be Krishna conscious. Not that one has to become an intellectual and memorize so many verses, but the knowledge of what we call sambandha and avideya and prayojana has to be understood. Sambandha means basically the relationship between the Lord, his energies, both material energy and spiritual energies, and the jiva soul. What is their relationship? And what is that's the tattvas, it's called the tattvas. Tattva means basically some eternal category. Something that continues to exist. Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, and Shakti Tattva. So one has to understand these things thoroughly. Otherwise you get bewildered. Not that you have to remember verses or anything like that, but you have to understand these things. And then one has to understand avideya, which is the process of becoming Krishna conscious. And then finally one has to understand prayojana, which is the goal of Krishna consciousness. So these are very important aspects of knowledge. Sambandha, avideya, and prayojana. Okay. So now that I understand these things, how do I get detached? That's an interesting question. Because to be detached, as Prabhupada mentions in his purport, one has to be attached. So what should I get attached to? Interesting question. So am I so advanced that I'm completely attached to Krishna's holy name? Maybe not. Am I so advanced that I'm completely attached to the deities? Am I so advanced that I'm completely attached to what? what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Hearing and chanting and remembering. And frankly, we may not be so advanced like that. So what do we do about that? You know, I get this question all the time. How do I become enthusiastic about devotional service? Should I just concentrate on, I want to be a pure devotee, I want to be a pure devotee, I want to be a pure devotee? And they say that, you know, that doesn't really enthuse me. Like if you hear, I mean, one has to be honest, in the beginning stage or in the intermediate stage, does that really enthuse you? Does it really strike your heart that you want to be a pure devotee? Like, Krishna, you may crush me by your embrace. Krishna, may you leave me broken-hearted by not being present before me. Krishna, you're completely free to do anything and everything, and you remain my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Are you ready for that? Any of you? Raise your hand. Wow. Disappointed. So no one's ready for that. So that's pure devotional service. So, yeah, I mean, we want it. I definitely want it. But is it something that I can think of all the time? I mean, can I actually think of Queen Kunti's prayers where she says, Vipada Santu Takshashwad, Tatra Tatra Jagat Guru. Again and again, my dear Supreme Personality of Godhead, please send these miseries. So apunar bhavadarshanam. So I can see the repeated birth and death. I don't see repeated birth and death in the material world anymore. Are we ready to pray like that? Any of you? Any of you pray for more miseries? I don't. I pray for less miseries. I mean, just like recently I had some kidney stone problem. And I have to say, honestly, I wasn't saying to Krishna, Krishna, whatever you want, do it. I was saying, as I was experiencing extreme pain, Krishna, save me! Honestly, we should be honest with ourselves and with others. You know, sometimes we put on a facade. You know, pure devotee facade. Especially in my position, you have to put on a pure devotee facade. Facade means a front, false front. So you put on, so you say, oh, no, I was praying Krishna, help, this is too much. Take away the pain. And ultimately he did after 3 weeks. So, prayer worked. Doctors also worked too. So, or are we on the level of, what is it? Yugayitam nimishena chakshusha pravishyayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda vidahename. Krishna, I'm feeling you're separated. A moment is like a yuga cycle or more. The whole world is vacant in your absence. Wow. That's one of the goals. You feel like that now? I mean, maybe now that I recited the verse. Yeah, maybe for the next few minutes. But generally, throughout the day, you're doing so many things. You're looking at TikTok on the mobile phone, maybe, hopefully not. And are you feeling separation from Krishna? There's a moment on TikTok, like 12 years or more of a yuga cycle. There's a moment sleeping like that. No, it's not like that for us. It's just, you know, we're not on that level. Of course, we may be on the level of Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Maham Vishameva Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Padapagajas Dita Duli Satrasanda Chintaya. That Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other save me from this horrible ocean of birth and death and fix me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. I mean, that one I can relate to. Save me, save me, save me. Like Prabhupada said when we chant Hare Krishna, we should actually be crying out for Krishna, like a child crying out for his mother. So the question is still right, how do we get detached from the material world? And what do we get, in other words, what do we get attached to? Interesting. So Prabhupada says something very interesting in one of his purports in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that in the beginning, one is attached to the service, and then later on, one is attached directly, to the process of devotional service, hearing, chanting, etc., like that. So, in other words, we overcome our attachments, which cause the quivering, by being attached to something for Krishna. And so we have this verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anashakta Shabhishanyataramu Yunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagyam Uchite, which is a really important verse. Rupa Goswami states that one can give up his attachment through a process called Yukta Vairagya. So the word Yukta comes from the root in Sanskrit, yuj, which means like a connection. Like in English, of course, we have a similar word, which is yoke. Like if you're taking care of oxen, you would yoke the oxen, connect the oxen like that. And so that's where the word yoga comes from. So yoga means to connect yourself with the Supreme. So yukta vairagyam means to connect yourself to Krishna by doing service for Krishna, or engaging Krishna's energy in the service. So we're attached, of course, Hare Krishna. So we don't get attached to the results of our service. That Krishna advises us against in the Gita. But we have attachment to the service itself and the ingredients of the service. In other words, if you're attached to something, let's take a person in family life. There may be a tendency to be attached to your husband, wife, little kiddies. So instead of saying, like an impersonalist would say, their own Maya, we say, Isha Vasham idam sarvam, Yatkancha jagajam jagat, Tena chiktena bunchida, Margurha, Kashas Vijana. That's from the Upanishad. What does that verse say? That Krishna actually is the owner of everything and controller of everything. And he gives us certain things as our quota, but for the purpose of using in his service. And if you're not attached to keeping those things nicely, then in one sense you're not recognizing that that belongs, or that person or object belongs to Krishna. If you're not attached to keeping even your car in good condition, then that's impersonalism, because it belongs to Krishna. I remember one time with Prabhupada in the car, and the person driving, it wasn't me, it wasn't my car. So Prabhupada wiped his hand on the dashboard, his finger, and some dust came off. And Prabhupada said, who do you think this car belongs to? And of course the person could have said, it's mine, Prabhupada. It's not Krishna's. Sometimes, of course, we see in temples that if something belongs to Krishna, nobody takes care of it. If it's actually literally belongs to the temple, it's not taken care of. So Prabhupada did advocate that a person have their own car that they drive rather than a shared car. I know sometimes you have to have shared cars, but someone has to be responsible. Because I remember in the early days of the movement, no one was responsible. The oil didn't get changed, and nobody put petrol in the car either. They thought the car ran on Krishna's mercy rather than on petrol. So it was always empty. You ever experienced that? Same thing. Because it's not your car. Probably it's a possession turns sand to gold. So, but literally if you understand it's Krishna's, then you'll take care of it better than if it was yours. But people don't understand that. I mean, like you come to some ISKCON temple. This temple is very nice. The grounds are very nice and everything. I'm admiring it. But many times you go to an ISKCON temple, and the grounds are not taken care of so nicely. And you go into someone's house, some in private individual's house, and wow, it's beautiful, all these plants and everything like that. Like, I'm staying at someone's house here. They shall remain nameless, protect the innocent. And there's so many nice flowers and plants and everything like that. It's just, wow, really nice. But many times you go to, because the temple is Krishna's, so we don't take care of it so well. It doesn't belong to us. But we have to understand the things that are been given to us to take care of it, and even the things that haven't been given to us to take care of, they belong to Krishna. So that's why Prabhupada said the temple should be revolutionary clean. And of course I see that here. It's not a criticism of this place. This is remarkable. We were driving up and saying the grounds are well taken care of. The fences look good. Fantastic. Somehow or other you're very Krishna conscious here. I praise you for that. Nice. It's one of the best places I've ever been at. That's the first, and that's the first thing Prabhupada would look at too. How are things taken care of? I remember one temple, this is in Miami, Florida, the devotees didn't want to take care of the grass, so they just spread old leaves on them. And in America, the leaves fall during the fall time. They fall on the ground. So we thought, this will keep the ground clear for Prabhupada. Prabhupada called it a jungle. Just because of that. The Prabhupada appreciate things nicely trimmed and nice flowers and everything like that. So really that's the point. That whatever Krishna gives you, or you have some ability to take care of, it belongs to Krishna. You see Krishna everywhere. Yomam pasati sarvatra savam shamai pasati tashaham na pranashami sacha me na pranashati. One who sees everywhere sees everything in me, Krishna says. He's never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. And so, yes, become attached to your family for the right purpose. To make it what? What is the right purpose? So you can enjoy their sweet smiles? No. So Krishna can enjoy them. So they become Krishna conscious, like we say, Lord Shabbadev says, no one should become a mother or father or worshipful deity, guru, or whatever, unless they're capable of saving their dependents from birth and death. So you get attached to the service. And that attachment frees one from the material world. And that service attachment becomes spiritualized. You become spiritualized, just like the Bhagavad Gita tells us. What is it? Brahmarpanam brahmahavyo brahmano brahmanam tam. Brahma tena gantavyam. Brahma karma samadhi. What does that verse say? That if one works for Krishna, Brahma karma, that means works for the spiritual purposes, which is Krishna consciousness, then that's the same thing as samadhi. One should be absorbed in it. And not only, Prabhupada translates the first translation of the Gita was actually, I like better than the newly edited one. As the Prabhupada said, the offering becomes Brahman, the person making the offering becomes Brahman, the result of the offering becomes Brahman, and everything becomes merged in the fire of Brahman. Now, the word merged doesn't mean merged in terms of losing its identity. Merge means become spiritualized. The example Prabhupada gave is the iron rod in the fire becomes like fire. So our attachments can be the cause of our vairagya. Another example Prabhupada gave is that, another example Prabhupada gave is that you takes a thorn to take out a thorn. So our thorn is the attachment to enjoying something for ourselves. And the thorn that we use, it's not a thorn exactly, but the process that we use to take away that attachment is to be attached to having Krishna enjoy that. Just a little change in consciousness. Having Krishna enjoy it. And then you become completely free of attachments, vairagya, Vairagya Vidya Niji Bhakti Yoga, Shiksharta Eka Prashapananam. And you really don't have to think about giving up things. You accept things. At the same time, one has to be careful about not trying to engage more things than one is spiritually capable of enjoying, capable of engaging. And that's why we need the association of devotees. Like if you think that you can be like Ramananda Roy and teach the Devadasis, how to dance, you are wrong. For those of you who don't know that story, Ramananda Roy is, in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he is Vishaka Devi, sometimes considered Arjuna too, but Vishaka Devi. And his service was teaching these young girls how to perform dances, like the Jagannath Priya Natakam, in front of Lord Jagannath. And so, in order to do that, he would dress them, he would bathe them, he would decorate their bodies and teach them all these different mudras to dance. And that was his prerogative. He could engage so much in Krishna's service. We cannot engage things. I don't think any of you men are capable of that. Maybe some of you are. Maybe some of you are on that level. So we have to be careful in the name of Yukta Vairagya to not overstep our bounds or adhikar or right. And that requires the association of devotees. Like Prabhupada often said, if we keep the association of devotees like many sticks together, we can't be broken. If we're one stick just by ourselves, we can be broken. So, therefore, people, let devotees correct us if we're trying to do more than we're able to do spiritually. So anyway, these are very important principles in Yukta Vairagya, and this way we can get detached from the material world. Be attached, and don't worry about your attachments, but use those attachments in Krishna's service. Anyway, so anyone have any questions or comments? Yes?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the class.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have two, but maybe the first one will answer it. Is detachment a separate intentional practice, or is it the byproduct of the practice that we're prescribed?
It's a byproduct. We don't worry. I don't worry about how detached I am. I mean, I'll give you an example. One time I tried to be detached from something, and that something was pizza. The reason I tried to be detached was because basically I wanted to control my senses. So I was very much, in the beginning days, a little bit not so beginning days either, like 15, 20 years ago, I was very attached to having cheese on everything. Everything. Cheese on my cereal in the morning, cheese on the rice. Kishori may remember that, right? Cheese on, what else I put cheese on? Everything. I would even go to India and bring cheese in case they didn't have it with me. I would have a devotee can the cheese. You know, just like in cans. So, because I'm so addicted. So, I was thinking, can't give it up. So my Ayurvedic doctor said, you got to give it up. And I said, no, I'd rather die. But then I had a realization. What was the realization? The realization, first of all, is the body belongs to Krishna. But that wasn't really enough. The realization is, what is the purpose of my life? Okay, Hare Krishna. My purpose is to please Prabhupada. Actually, this is another point, that we were talking about purposes and things that inspire us. So, each and every one of us has to pick something that inspires us within Krishna consciousness. So what inspires me more than anything else is the role model that Srila Prabhupada gave us. You know, I talk about Prabhupada very often. Last night I was talking about this. How Prabhupada was so dedicated to Krishna and so renounced and so focused. And to me, he's my role model. I want to be like that. So, and I want to please him. So I started to think about this, pleasing Prabhupada in relationship to my diet. I'm not suggesting that you all have to give up eating pizza or else I'll never get invited back here again. That's not the point. Oh, give up eating cheese. But I started to think about my diet and my service to Prabhupada, and I thought, what is the purpose of my life and who do I want to please? So there's bhakti there. I'm not saying I love Krishna. That's not what I'm saying. But I can say that I do love Prabhupada. I do want to please Prabhupada. And it's interesting, that's one of the purposes or reasons why we have our spiritual masters, Guru, Siksha Guru and Diksha Guru. So he gives us someone that we can relate to. You know, Krishna's really high there. I mean, yeah, he's beautiful, I can relate to him, but he's really up there. And I'm really down here. So, anyway, so I thought about that, my service to Prabhupada, and how to maximize that. Do I want to die early? Or because, you know, I have a family history. My father died from heart disease when he was in his 50s. And right now I'm really old, 73, 74. So, or do I want to please? So out of that idea of purpose of life, serving Prabhupada, then I actually gave it up. And it hasn't bothered me at all. I can talk about it, I can see you eating it, and it doesn't bother me. And I never thought of giving it up. That was something I could because the more you think about giving something up, the interesting thing is attachment and aversion are opposite sides of the same coin. The more you think about giving something up, the more you think about it. You know, I just tell all of you, if I give a class on why you should give up pizza, you're probably going to go out and get pizza today. You know, just like, because you meditate on it. Like, it's interesting, there's a discussion Prabhupada had with one of my godbrothers, where this godbrother was criticizing that younger Brahmin in the Sakshi Gopal story. You may not know. Sakshi Gopal is a deity that walked all the way across India for the purpose of witnessing a promise that an older Brahmin had made to a younger Brahmin, and it was a marriage promise. And so that younger Brahmin took the trouble of asking the deity, you know, walking all the way across India again, asking the deity to walk back with him the other way across India so he could get married to this girl. And Prabhupada said he's a pure devotee, and anyway. And so this devotee jokingly asked Prabhupada, if he was such a pure devotee, why did he want to get married? And then Prabhupada said to this devotee, he said, you're saying this because no one would have you. So in other words, you know, when people speak negatively, that means they're really attached. The more you think of not doing something, you can't, as I often say, you can't do a don't. It's impossible to do a don't. The more you think of not doing something, the more you want to do it. So, but the more you think positively, what is the purpose of my life? So in that case of food, it was like that. You know, it was easy. I did it because Prabhupada wanted to please Prabhupada, wanted to live longer to please Prabhupada. So, as you were asking, you don't try to become detached. It really doesn't work. You try to become attached. Attached, you know, someone's attached to their family and for their sense gratification. I just tell them, you know, remain with your family. There's an interesting story in South India when Lord Chaitanya was preaching. One Brahmana wanted to follow him and leave his family, and Lord Chaitanya said, don't ever talk like that. Remain where you are and just Chant it here with your family. Engage your family in Krishna Katha. In this way, you will achieve me, Lord Chaitanya said. So, good question. Yeah. Just be positive. I always like to think of the positive. Even when I talk about the offenses on chanting, I don't like to express them in a negative. Like, first offense is blaspheming the devotees of the Lord who have dedicated their lives to the propagation of the holy name of the Lord. I say instead, what do I say? I say you serve them. You praise them. It's a lot easier for me to think of than to think of not doing something. Don't blaspheme. No. When I see a devotee, I try to get my mind to think how nice they are. Instead of thinking, I shouldn't criticize that guy. He's a little crazy. I'm not going to say anything about it. Okay. Instead, he's sincere, he comes to the morning program every morning. Instead of saying he's obsessive compulsive. You could say that about him. Maybe true. But so you take it in the positive, and then negative automatically goes away. It's really nice. So I shouldn't hate anybody. Okay, how do you do that? How do you do that? You see everybody connected to Krishna. They're all your brothers and sisters. And they're just bewildered. And we have a lot of, even insofar as our interactions with people outside of the Krishna conscious movement, we have so many negative words we use. The karmis, the demons, the rakshasas, the meat-eaters, the malechas, the dogs, the hogs, the camels, the asses. Oh my God. Yeah, I understand some of these words in the Bhagavatam. Swavid varaho srikada samstuta parashu parasha pashu nayat karna patopeta jadidhamagana. I understand that. But as far as we see, when Prabhupada dealt personally with people, he would deal in a very positive way. As the Bhagavad Gita says, we encourage people in the spirit of devotion. So I don't call people karmis. I call them, I don't call, but I look at people as people who don't know yet about Krishna. They're devotees, but they just don't know right now. So of course this leads into what Lord Kapiladev said as far as a Vaishnava's qualities. Ajata Shatrava, a Vaishnava has no enemies. So we don't see people, at least I don't. Certainly I don't see clothes as karmi clothes. That's an interesting thing. Karmi clothes. No such thing. Someone may be executing karma or vikarma in this world, but we don't see them as, I don't see them as karmis. I see them as people who don't know about Krishna yet. And I see them as my brothers and sisters. Yastu sarvani bhutani atma naivana pachati. So we have to be careful about negativity creeping in, because there are many descriptions in Shastras, and that's to help us understand different categories. But insofar as our personal dealings, we have to be careful about letting negativity creep into that. So, you have another question?
That answered my second question. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question. Krishna Kirtan. Good to see you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just wonder if you could elaborate on the last line of sentence of the purport. Srila Prabhupada mentions, if you engage in transcendental activity, then Krishna will bless you with devotional service. Is that saying there's something different between devotional service and transcendental activities?
No, it's not saying there's anything different, but there's a devotional service in practice and devotional service. There's different levels of devotional service, like we find from Rupa Goswami. Devotional service in practice, devotional service spontaneously, Ramanuga Bhakti, the devotional service in emotion, Bhava Bhakti, and finally Prema Bhakti. So Krishna will engage you in pure devotional service. Just understanding what Prabhupada said. So, yeah, devotional service on different levels. Yes, I have a question back there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, good to see you.
Oh, yeah. All right. Good to see you again.
Yeah, just thinking how you're commenting on not seeing things in a negative way, material objects and so forth, and you gave the example of the brahmacharis,
Yeah.
like that. And Prabhupada did say that we don't, I believe it's attributed to Srila Prabhupada that we don't fear Maya enough. Could you comment on that?
Well, Maya's not the other person. You know, in the beginning, I took it perhaps in the wrong, when I first joined the movement, I even feared my mother. You know, because I thought, oh, Maya, Ma means Maya. You know, Prabhupada said jokingly that one time. So when I would go to see my mother, I would always bring a brahmachari with me to protect me from my mother. Of course, she began to understand what I was doing. And when I spoke to her, I mentioned this, I think, last night, I would always just look at her feet. And whenever she spoke, I'd always have my bead bag in my hand chanting to avoid getting contaminated by her speech. But anyway, and you know, I think people are not Maya. Like I said, the pizza's not Maya. The sense objects are not Maya. We're the ones in Maya. We got to take responsibility for it. And so, if we see things connected to Krishna, meant for Krishna's pleasure, then the object doesn't represent a danger. It's like the Prabhupada gave the example of the snake with its poison or its fangs removed. You understand? Yes. So, that's excuse me. That's Prabhupada's example, that when the senses are engaged in Krishna's service, and what does that mean to see everything as connected and owned by Krishna? You know, anything. So we should train the mind like that. That's what I mean to understand the tattvas. Part of understanding the tattvas, you know, Vishnu tattva, Jiva tattva, Shakti tattva, is to understand Aham Sarvasya Prabhu Matak Sarvam Bhavartate. Krishna's the source of everything. He's the controller of everything. He's the owner of everything. So when I see something, then I think that's Krishna's. Like Prabhupada said, renunciation means when you see some money on the street, you don't take it or renounce it in a Mayavadi sense, you take it back to the owner. Right? And that's renunciation. So yes, we should fear Maya. In other words, we should understand how much we're able to have that consciousness. In that sense. You know, there's certain circumstances that we may not be able to maintain that consciousness in. Yes, that's a fact. Certain circumstances, each and every one of us, we know our limitations, and we have, I mentioned before, we have the association of devotees to help us understand our limitations. I may think, you know, generally, well, I know myself, generally we think we're more advanced than we actually are. I think it's good to be honest. And I did mention in class, we put on these facades, these false fronts. So let's be honest. I mean, what's the harm? What's the harm? Yeah, people are not going to worship me anymore? Who cares? Who cares whether people respect me? You know what? That's not going to get you anywhere. You know, you have to. So that's real detachment, really, not to care what others think, and just be yourself in Krishna consciousness. You know, of course, observe the regulated principles. You know, offer obeisances, use your intelligence in serving Krishna, control yourself, etc., like that. But don't try to portray yourself as something that you're not.
You mentioned, Maharaj, that Ramananda Roy could do these things, and you asked us, maybe there's a few of you that have that ID card. Therefore, I'm just asking in that line of what you're saying is that some of us may be able to...
Don't do it.
No, of course, but some of us are able to associate in areas that others would fear
Yeah.
better and it may be perceived by other devotees that that person's in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They may be perceived like that. I mean, just like Lord Chaitanya tested Srivas Thakur one time because Lord Nityananda was, Navaduta. He would do so many wild things. For example, sometimes Lord Nityananda would be so ecstatic and throw off his clothes and start dancing and chanting. And Lord Chaitanya went to Srivas Thakur, why do you accept this guy in your house? This Avaduta in your house. And then Srivas Thakur replied, even if Lord Nityananda married a Muslim girl or entered a liquor shop, I would not be deterred from my faith in Lord Nityananda. So that's Lord Nityananda. But we should not do that.
And the initial reactions to Pundarik Vidyiniti.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting story. Pundarik Vidyiniti, for those of you who don't know, was dressed very opulently with oil in his hair. His hair was slicked back. He was sitting on a four-poster bed with silk sheets and chewing pan. And so Gadadhar Pandit was brought to see him. And he was told he was a great devotee, and Gadadhar Pandit was thinking, how can he be a great devotee? He's acting just like an abject materialist. And then the verse from the Bhagavatam was chanted about Krishna's mercy, and Pundarik Vidyiniti went into ecstasy and tore apart his bed sheets and everything like that, and Gadadhar Pandit Goswami realized he was wrong by judging a Vaishnava from some of the external manifestations. So we have to be very careful. Also, in the story of Ramananda Roy, this devotee Pradyumna Mishra, who was sent by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to see Ramananda Roy, he became confused when he heard that Ramananda Roy was doing all these things. Then he went back to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said, Ramananda Roy is the only person who has that prerogative to do that. And then even Lord Chaitanya said, he said, if I see the wooden form of the opposite gender, the mind gets, changes in the mind. But that's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of course, Lord Chaitanya wasn't like that. I mean, Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he's giving us that example that we have to be very careful about what we can do for Krishna. Know our limitations. But within our limitations, get attached to the object we're using for Krishna, because we have to take care of it nicely. Clean your car, right? Take care of your wife, take care of your children. Be kind to them. Be kind to your husband. Right? Because he's Krishna's property. He's not yours. Isn't it? Who do you think your husband belongs to? Your wife belongs to? Not your property. Nirmana mohajita sangatosha. You don't own anything. Right? Okay. So I think we should end now before everyone gets upset. So all glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, someone asked a question. I'm just answering the question. So, by Chaitanya, you asked the question. Varnashram principle talks about taking sannyas and becoming detached. Actually, Prabhupada said that the preferable stage of renunciation in Kali Yuga is Kshetra sannyas, where one remains with the family and engages the family in Krishna consciousness. Okay, we'll talk about that later. It's in end of class.